Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. One story video today, full story with closure. Guy spends 3 months hand carving a chess set for his dad's 60th birthday. Every piece modeled after a family member. Dad opens it, says, "Huh, that's something," then spends the rest of the night showing off a store-bought watch from the golden child brother. Next morning, the chess set is in the trash. Still wrapped. What happens after is the real story. Timestamps below. Let's get into it. I spent 3 months building my dad a hand-carved chess set for his 60th. Found it in the trash the next morning. Still in the wrapping. My brother's store. Bought watch was on his wrist. I didn't say anything. I just never came back. So I spent 3 months building my dad a hand-carved chess set for his 60th birthday. Every piece was designed after someone in our family. Nights until 2 in the morning, sanding, shaping, detailing. He opened it at the party, said, "Huh, that's something," set it on the table next to the paper plates, and spent the rest of the night showing off the store-bought watch my brother gave him. Found the chess set in the trash the next morning, still in the wrapping. I didn't say anything. I just never came back. My name's Nolan. I'm 32. And this is the story of how I stopped trying to earn my father's love. Not because I ran out of love to give, but because I finally realized I was pouring it into a container that had no bottom. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. I grew up in a small town outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. My dad, Dale, was the kind of man who believed that love was something you earned, not something you were owed. He ran a small contracting business, built houses with his hands, and expected his sons to be cut from the same cloth. My older brother, Brody, was 3 years ahead of me, and everything my dad wanted in a firstborn. Tall, athletic, loud, confident. The kind of guy who'd walk into a room and own it before he even said a word. My mom, Diane, was sweet and well-meaning, but had this way of smoothing everything over that meant nothing ever actually got addressed. She was the rug, and all the family's problems got swept right under her. Then there was me. Quieter. I liked books. I liked building things with my hands too, but not houses. Wood carving, specifically. I started when I was about 12 after my grandfather, my mom's dad, taught me during a summer visit. Grandpa Earl was this gentle, patient man who smelled like cedar and pipe tobacco. He showed me how to take a block of wood and find the shape hiding inside it. I fell in love with it. By the time I was 16, I was making things that actually impressed people. Jewelry boxes, figurines, decorative pieces. It was my thing. My quiet, strange, apparently unimpressive thing. Because here's the deal. My dad never cared about it. Not once. Brody would come home with a second-place football trophy, and my dad would clear a spot on the mantle. I'd come home with a blue ribbon from the state fair for a hand-carved eagle, and my dad would say, "That's nice, bud," and go back to watching the game. I'm not saying he was cruel about it. He just treated my passion like a hobby I'd eventually outgrow, like collecting rocks or playing with action figures. Meanwhile, Brody's interests were treated like destiny. Brody went into the family business right after high school, started working with Dad, learning the trade, and within a few years they were like a two-man show. They'd go to job sites together, eat lunch together, come home and talk shop at the dinner table, while I sat there eating my mashed potatoes in silence. My mom would occasionally say something like, "Nolan got an A on his English paper," and my dad would nod without looking up. Cool. Thanks, Dad. I moved out at 18, got a small apartment, worked at a hardware store during the day, and carved at night. I started selling pieces online and at local craft markets. It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine. I also started teaching myself chess around that time. I'd always been interested in strategy games, and chess became this meditative thing for me. I'd play online, study openings, lose 1,000 times, and slowly get better. And somewhere along the way, the two passions merged. I started carving chess pieces. My first full set took me about 2 months. It was rough, honestly. The knights looked more like dogs than horses. But I kept at it. By the time I was 25, I was making sets that people were buying for $400 and $500. Custom work, themed sets, tournament quality boards. I even had a small following online. People appreciated the craftsmanship, the detail, the patience it took. Everyone except my dad. I'd bring pieces to family dinners. I'd show him photos. I'd tell him about orders I'd landed. He'd give me the same thin smile and say something like, "That's neat, Nolan. So Brody, how's the Henderson job going?" Every single time. like I was a commercial break between the parts of the show he actually wanted to watch. Brody, to his credit, wasn't actively trying to be the favorite. He just was. He was the one who followed in Dad's footsteps, who spoke his language, who could talk about load-bearing walls and permits over dinner. I spoke a different language entirely, and my dad never bothered to learn it. But I kept trying. Every birthday, every Father's Day, every Christmas, I made my dad something. A carved picture frame, a decorative box for his desk, a wall-mounted coat rack with hand-carved detail. He'd say thank you, put it somewhere, and I'd never see it displayed. I found the coat rack in the garage once, behind a stack of paint cans. The picture frame was in a junk drawer. The box was on a shelf in the basement, still wrapped in the tissue paper I'd put it in. But I kept telling myself the same line. Maybe the next one will be the one. Maybe if I make something truly incredible, he'll finally see me. So when my dad's 60th birthday started creeping up on the calendar, I got an idea. The most ambitious project I'd ever attempted. A full hand-carved chess set. Not just any set. Each piece was designed to represent someone in our family. The king was modeled after my grandfather Earl, the man who taught me everything. The queen was my grandmother. The bishops were my parents. The knights were Brody and me. The rooks were the two family houses, our childhood home and Grandpa's cabin. The pawns were carved to look like tools, each one different, representing the trades and skills our family was built on. Hammers, saws, chisels, wrenches. I spent 3 months on it. 3 months of staying up until 2 in the morning, sanding, shaping, detailing. I hand-finished every piece with tung oil. I built the board from walnut and maple, alternating squares with precision joints that would have made a furniture maker proud. I even lined the inside of the box with velvet and engraved a small brass plate on the lid that read, "To Dad, 60 years of building things that last. Love, Nolan." I wrapped it carefully in brown craft paper and tied it with twine. I drove to my parents' house the night of the party feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real stupid, vulnerable hope. The kind that makes you feel like a kid again, even when you know better. The party was nice. My mom had done the whole thing. Streamers, a cake from the bakery downtown, a playlist of my dad's favorite country songs. About 30 people showed up. Neighbors, guys from the job sites, a few cousins. Brody was there with his wife Whitney and their 2 kids. I showed up alone. I'd been single for about a year, which was another thing my dad liked to comment on. You'd find a girl if you put down the sandpaper once in a while. Hilarious. When it came time for gifts, Brody went first. He handed Dad a box and inside was a watch. A nice one, sure. A Seiko, probably $200. My dad's face lit up like Brody had just handed him the deed to a lake house. He put it on immediately, held his wrist up, showed everyone. "Now that's a watch," he said. "My boy knows what I like." Then it was my turn. I handed over the wrapped box. It was heavy. My dad took it, hefted it, and unwrapped it slowly. He opened the lid. He looked at the chess set. He looked at the pieces. He picked up the king, turned it over, set it back down. And he said, "Huh, that's something." Then he closed the lid, set it on the table next to the cake plates, and said, "Who wants another slice of cake?" That was it. That was the reaction to 3 months of my life carved into wood and handed over on a velvet-lined prayer. Huh, that's something. I stayed another hour. I smiled. I made small talk. I watched my dad show off his new watch to everyone who walked by, and then I went home. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a while. I didn't cry. I was past crying about it. I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left the shell sitting in the driver's seat. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came the next morning. I went back to my parents' house because I'd left my jacket on the back of a kitchen chair. It was early, maybe 7:30. I figured I'd slip in, grab it, maybe have coffee with my mom if she was up. I pulled into the driveway and the first thing I noticed was the trash cans. They were at the curb because pickup was that morning. Something caught my eye. Sitting on top of the recycling bin, slightly tilted, was a brown paper bag. And sticking out of it was a corner of brown craft paper, the same craft paper I'd wrapped the chess set in. I got out of the truck and walked over like my legs were moving on their own. I pulled the bag open. There it was. The chess set, still in the wrapping. The twine was still tied. He hadn't even opened it again after the party. He'd just taken it off the table and thrown it away with the paper plates and used napkins. 3 months of work. Hours and hours of carving, sanding, finishing, engraving. A family history rendered in wood, sitting in the trash next to a crushed soda can and a paper plate smeared with frosting. I stood there staring at it. The garbage truck was maybe 2 blocks away. I could hear it grinding and beeping as it worked its way down the street. In about 5 minutes, the whole thing would have been compacted and hauled to the dump, and I never would have known. I picked it up. I held it. And then I looked up at the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see my dad, sitting at the table drinking coffee, wearing Brody's watch. He hadn't even noticed me in the driveway. He was just sitting there, content, wearing the gift from the son who mattered. I put the chess set in my truck. I got in. I drove away. I didn't grab my jacket. I didn't say good morning. I didn't cry or scream or punch the steering wheel. I just drove home in complete silence, carried the chess set inside, set it on my workbench, and sat down on the floor. I sat there for a long time. That was the last time I went to my parents' house. Hold on. I need to pause here for a minute because I love how Nolan handled this. Most guys would have stormed back inside, caused a scene, and given the family ammunition to call them dramatic. Nolan gave them nothing. Just silence. And here's what the family doesn't understand yet. Silence from someone who always showed up is the loudest message you can send. The smartest thing Nolan does next is he doesn't announce anything. He just vanishes. And pay attention to how long it takes this family to even ask why. That gap tells you everything about how invisible this man has been his entire life. All right, let's keep going. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't send a dramatic text or post something passive-aggressive on social media. I just stopped showing up. My mom called the next week to ask if I was coming to Sunday dinner. I said I was busy. She called the week after that. I said I was working on a commission. The 3rd week she called, and I let it go to voicemail. Eventually, the calls slowed down. She'd text now and then. The usual stuff. Miss you, honey, or Dad's grilling steaks this weekend if you want to come by. I'd respond with something short. Sounds good. We'll see. I never went. Brody called once, about a month in. Hey man, Mom says you've been MIA. Everything cool? I told him, yeah, just been swamped with work. He said, all right, don't be a stranger. And that was the end of it. He didn't push. He didn't ask again. That was Brody for you. He cared, but not enough to be inconvenienced by it. The thing that killed me, the thing I kept turning over in my head like a rock in a tumbler, was that nobody asked why. Nobody said, Nolan, did something happen? Are you upset about something? Nobody connected the dots. Nobody noticed that I left the party quietly and never came back. Because that's how invisible I was in that family. You can't miss what you never really saw. My dad didn't reach out at all. Not once. Not a call, not a text, not even a, hey, you alive? Through Brody or my mom. The man who supposedly loved me couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone a single time in 5 months. And the thing is, that silence told me more than any conversation could have. Because if your kid disappears for a month and you don't even notice, the problem isn't the kid. The problem is you never learned their name in the first place. About 6 weeks after the birthday, my mom finally showed up at my apartment. She brought a casserole because of course she did. Diane's answer to every emotional crisis was a 9x13 pan of chicken and rice. She sat on my couch and asked me what was going on. Why hadn't I been around? Was I sick? Was I in trouble? I almost told her. I was so close. The words were right there. I found the chess set in the trash, Mom. He threw it away. He didn't even unwrap it again. But I looked at her face, and I knew exactly what would happen. She'd get that soft, pained look. She'd say something like, oh, honey, I'm sure he didn't mean it like that. You know how your father is? He's just not good at expressing himself. And then she'd go home and tell my dad I was upset. And he'd roll his eyes and say I was being sensitive. And nothing would change. Nothing ever changed. So instead, I said, I'm fine, Mom. Just been really focused on work. I've got a lot of orders coming in, and I'm trying to build something here. She seemed satisfied with that. She hugged me, told me she loved me, and left the casserole on the counter. I ate it over 3 days. It was good. My mom's cooking was never the problem. Here's what I didn't tell her. I'd found out something else during those 6 weeks. something I discovered entirely by accident while I was cleaning out my grandpa's cabin. Grandpa Earl had passed away about 4 years earlier, and the cabin had been sitting mostly untouched since then. My mom asked me to go out there and see what needed to be done before they decided whether to sell it. So I went. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it. Smelled like cedar and dust. His tools were still on the workbench. His books were still on the shelves. And in the back of the closet in his bedroom, inside an old lockbox, I found a stack of papers. Letters mostly. But buried in the pile was a document I'd never seen before. An earlier version of Grandpa Earl's will. Not the official one that had been filed with the estate, the one that left everything to my mom and her sister, Aunt Patty. This was a handwritten draft with a note clipped to it that said, "Updated version with attorney, August 2019. In this draft, Grandpa Earl had written a specific provision. The cabin and the 5 acres it sat on were supposed to go to me. Directly to me. Not to the estate, not to be split, not to be sold. To Nolan. Because, and I'm quoting from memory here, he's the only one who ever loved this place the way I did, and he's the only one who will take care of it." I sat on the edge of Grandpa's bed and read that line 4 times. The only one who ever loved this place the way I did. My grandfather saw me. He saw me when nobody else did, and he tried to make sure I'd have this place. But somewhere between this draft and the final version, that provision disappeared. I didn't know why. I didn't know if my mom or Aunt Patty had talked him out of it, or if the attorney had simplified things, or if Grandpa changed his mind. But the cabin was now technically my mom's, and she was talking about selling it. That discovery cracked open a door I'd been keeping shut, because it wasn't just about the chess set anymore. It was about a lifetime of being overlooked. A lifetime of being the quiet one, the weird one, the one whose passions didn't count because they didn't come with a trophy or a paycheck that my dad could brag about. It was about watching Brody get the spotlight, the praise, the attention, the inheritance of my dad's approval, while I got head pats and afterthoughts. And now, the one place that ever felt like home, the cabin where my grandfather taught me to carve, the place where someone finally said, "You're enough," was about to get put on the market so my mom could split the proceeds with Aunt Patty. Something shifted in me during those weeks. I wasn't angry exactly. I was just done. Done performing. Done auditioning for a role I was never going to get cast in. I started making a plan. Not a revenge plan. Just a plan to take care of myself for once. Wait, hold on a second. This part is huge, and I need you guys to understand why. Nolan just found proof that his grandfather specifically wanted him to have that cabin. Wrote it down, signed it, told people, and somebody made it disappear. That's not just losing an inheritance. That's having the one person who ever saw you get overruled by the people who didn't. But here's what I respect about Nolan. He doesn't go scorched earth out of anger. He gets an attorney. He gathers evidence. He moves like a chess player, which is fitting. This man spent years learning strategy, and now he's applying it to his own life. Watch how this plays out. The next few months were the loneliest and most productive of my life. I threw myself into my work like a man possessed. Not because I was running from something, although I probably was, but because for the first time, I was building something entirely for myself without looking over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching. My online store had been doing okay before, but I'd always held back. I priced things too low because I didn't think people would pay what they were worth. I played small because that's what I'd been trained to do. Nolan doesn't take up space. Nolan is the quiet one. Not anymore. I redesigned my website, invested in better photography, raised my prices, listed a chess set for $1,200. It sold in 3 days. Made another for $1,500. Sold in a week. I started getting inquiries from collectors, interior designers, even a guy who ran a high-end gift shop in Nashville. By month 2, I was making more money from carving than I'd ever made at any job. Enough to quit the hardware store. Imagine that. The thing my dad dismissed as sandpaper and sawdust was turning into a legitimate business. I also started going to the cabin on weekends. My mom hadn't sold it yet, so it just sat there empty. I'd drive out on Saturday mornings and work at Grandpa's bench. The smell of the wood, the light through the window, the sound of nothing but birds and my own hands working. It felt like Grandpa was still there saying, "Slow down, Nolan. Let the wood tell you what it wants to be." During one of those weekends, I met Colleen. She lived about a mile down the road from the cabin in a small house with a garden that looked like something out of a magazine. She was out front struggling with a fence post that had come loose in a storm. I stopped to help because that's what you do on a country road. You don't just wave and keep going. She was 30, a veterinarian who worked at a large animal practice about 20 minutes away. Dark hair, kind eyes, and this way of talking that was direct but never harsh. She thanked me for the fence post, offered me a glass of iced tea, and we ended up sitting on her porch talking for 2 hours. I told her about the carving. She told me about a horse she'd saved the week before that everyone else had written off. We didn't talk about my family, we just talked. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was actually listening. We started seeing each other after that. She came to the cabin one day and watched me work. Didn't say anything for 20 minutes, just sat there observing. Then she said, "You disappear when you carve, like you go somewhere else. It's beautiful to watch." Nobody had ever said anything like that to me. Nobody had ever looked at what I did and called it beautiful. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom for a minute after that one. While my personal life was quietly blooming, I was also doing research. I'd taken the handwritten draft of Grandpa's will to an attorney named Franklin Morse. Semi-retired estate lawyer, with the demeanor of a man who'd seen every family fight the legal system could produce. He studied the document carefully and told me something that changed everything. The handwritten draft wasn't just a rough version. It was dated and signed. And according to Franklin, there were grounds to argue that the final will didn't properly reflect Grandpa's intent. There was a note in the margin that said, "Cabin to Nolan, separate from estate. Discussed with Patty, she agrees." If Aunt Patty had agreed, and it was removed without documentation, there was a legal basis to challenge. I wasn't trying to take anything from my mom or Aunt Patty. The estate had other assets. What I wanted was what Grandpa wanted, for the cabin to be mine. Franklin asked if anyone could confirm Grandpa's wishes. Grandpa's neighbor, a retired carpenter named Clifton Hale, had been his closest friend for 40 years. When I told him what I'd found, he said, "Your grandpa talked about that all the time. Said the cabin was for you. Said you were the only one in the family who understood what it meant to make something with your hands." He agreed to testify. The business was growing. Colleen was in my life. Franklin was working on the cabin. And for the first time, I wasn't building something to impress my father. I was building something for me. 5 months after the birthday party, Franklin filed a petition with the probate court. He'd discovered that the attorney who prepared the final will, a guy named Philip Dodd who had since retired, had notes in his file referencing a phone conversation with my mother. The notes said, "Diane called, discuss simplifying distribution, remove specific bequests, split everything equally." One phone call. My mother had called the attorney and asked him to simplify the will, which effectively erased my grandfather's specific wish that I receive the cabin. She knew. She had to have known. Grandpa told people about his plans. Clifton knew. Aunt Patty apparently knew. There's no way my mother didn't know. While the legal wheels were turning, my business exploded. A lifestyle blogger with 2 million followers posted an unboxing video of one of my chess sets. 800,000 views in a week. My inbox flooded. I had to set up a wait list. Within 2 weeks, I'd been contacted by a public television craft show, a gallery in Asheville, and a representative of a well-known actor who collects handmade chess sets. The commission budget was more than I'd made in some entire years of my life. Colleen was there through all of it. She never made it about her. One night she looked at me across the table and said, "You know you deserve all of this, right?" I told her I was starting to believe that. She said, "Good, because I'm not going anywhere, and I refuse to be with someone who doesn't know their own worth." Then my mom called. Not a text this time, a call. I picked up because it had been a while, and despite everything, she was still my mother. "Nolan, we need to talk." Her voice was tight. Not angry exactly, but wound up like she was trying very hard to stay calm. "I got a letter from a lawyer about your grandfather's cabin. Can you explain to me what's going on?" I kept my voice even. "I found a document in Grandpa's cabin, a handwritten version of his will that says the cabin was supposed to go to me. I took it to an attorney and he agrees there's a valid claim. That's what's going on." Silence. Then, "Nolan, you can't just go behind everyone's back like this. This is a family matter." "Mom, I've been gone for 5 months. Dad hasn't called me once. Brody texts memes. You send casseroles. Nobody in this family has asked me a single real question about my life in years. So, forgive me if I don't feel like running major life decisions through the family committee." She got quiet. Then she said, Your father is very upset. About the cabin, about all of it. He says you've been distant and disrespectful. I gripped the phone so hard I'm surprised it didn't crack. Distant and disrespectful. The man who threw away a 3-month labor of love without even looking at it twice thought I was being disrespectful. The man who hadn't dialed my number in 5 months thought I was being distant. I told her the lawyer would handle the legal stuff. If Dad wants to talk, he knows my number. Colleen came in afterward and sat next to me. She didn't say anything, just put her hand on my arm and waited. After a few minutes, I said, "They're going to make me the villain in this story." She said, "Then let them. You know who you are." 2 days later, Brody called. Not casual this time. "Dude, what are you doing? Mom's freaking out. Dad's talking about getting his own lawyer. You're really going to sue the family over a cabin?" I told him I wasn't suing anyone. I was asking for what Grandpa wanted me to have. There's a document that proves it, a witness who confirms it, and notes from the original attorney showing the provision was removed after Mom called. Then he said, "Look, man, even if that's true, is it worth tearing the family apart?" And there it was, the question that every family scapegoat gets asked. Is it worth tearing the family apart? As if the family wasn't already torn. As if the tears weren't there long before I found a chess set in the garbage. As if being ignored for 32 years was somehow less destructive than asking for what was rightfully mine. I said, "Brody, I love you, but this family was torn apart a long time ago. You just didn't notice because you were always on the side that was holding together." He didn't have an answer for that. Okay, pause for a second. Is it worth tearing the family apart? I despise that question because it's only ever aimed at the person standing up, never at the person who caused the damage. Nobody asked Dale if trashing his son's gift was worth it. Nobody asked Diane if erasing her own father's wishes was worth it. But Nolan pushes back one time, and suddenly he's the problem. That's called a scapegoat dynamic, and Nolan just broke out of it. His response to Brody was flawless. "You didn't notice because you were on the side that was holding together." That's going to keep Brody up at night. Now Dale finally shows up. Let's see how this goes. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. Franklin was confident. Clifton was ready to testify. The documentation was solid. And for the first time in my life, I was going to walk into a room and demand to be seen. Not as Nolan the quiet one. Not as Nolan the disappointment. Just as Nolan, the grandson who was loved by a man who carved, and who carved because he was loved by that man. But before the court date, my dad decided to do something he hadn't done in 5 months. He decided to come see me. It was a Tuesday evening. I was in my workshop finishing a commission when I heard a truck pull into my driveway. I knew the sound of that engine. I'd grown up hearing it. My dad's old Ford. Dale was standing on my porch looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on the planet. He was wearing jeans, a flannel shirt, and Brody's watch. Of course he was wearing the watch. "Can I come in?" he said. I stepped aside. He walked into my living room and looked around like he was inspecting a job site. His eyes moved over the shelves where I displayed some of my pieces, the chess sets on the side table, the framed photos of me and Colleen. He didn't comment on any of it. "Sit down, Dad." He sat on the couch. I sat in the chair across from him. We looked at each other. He spoke first. "Your mother says you're trying to take the cabin. I'm not trying to take anything. I'm trying to honor what Grandpa wanted." He waved his hand dismissively. Earl was sentimental. He said a lot of things in his last years. Doesn't mean they were all practical. He wrote it down, Dad. He signed it. He told his neighbor. He told Aunt Patty. He wanted me to have the cabin. The only reason I don't already have it is because Mom called the lawyer and had it removed. His jaw tightened. Your mother was trying to keep things fair. Fair for who? Because it sure wasn't fair for me, and it wasn't fair for Grandpa. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and pointed at me in that way he always did when he was about to deliver what he thought was an unassailable point. Nolan, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's a cabin. It's old. Needs a new roof. The plumbing's shot. It's not worth what you think it is. It's worth everything to me. That's the whole point. And the fact that you can't understand that is exactly why we're here. He said he didn't come to argue about a cabin. He came because everyone was upset, and he didn't understand what had gotten into me. That's when I decided to stop holding back. You want to know what's gotten into me? I'll tell you. But you need to actually listen. Not nod and wait for your turn to talk. Actually listen. He sat back and crossed his arms, which was Dale language for, I'm tolerating this. I spent 3 months building you a chess set for your 60th birthday. Every piece was hand-carved. The king was modeled after Grandpa Earl. The board was walnut and maple. I engraved a brass plate on the lid. It was the single best thing I've ever made. I put more of myself into that gift than anything I've ever created. He blinked. I could tell he barely remembered it. You opened it at the party, said, "Huh, that's something," set it on the table next to the cake plates, and spent the rest of the night showing off the watch Brody bought you. He shifted uncomfortably. And then the next morning I came back to get my jacket and found the chess set in the trash can at the curb, still wrapped. You threw it away, Dad. You didn't even give it to Goodwill or shove it in the basement. You put it in the garbage with the used paper plates. The room was dead silent. I watched his face go through about 4 different expressions in 5 seconds. Confusion, recognition, defensiveness, and then something I'd never seen on Dale before. Shame. I didn't know, he started. Didn't know what? That throwing away a handmade gift from your son might hurt? That treating someone like they're invisible for 32 years might have consequences? What exactly didn't you know, Dad? He uncrossed his arms. His hands went to his knees and just sat there. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Not physically. Dale was still a big man, but something inside him had contracted. I didn't mean to throw it away, he said quietly. Your mother was cleaning up, and I thought it was a decoration or something someone brought. It had a brass plate that said, "To Dad" on it. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I saw my father confronted with something he couldn't dismiss or wave away. The evidence was too clear. The hurt was too real. And I was sitting right in front of him, not flinching. I messed up, he said. Yeah, Dad, you did. Not just with the chess set. Every carving I brought home that you ignored. Every ribbon I won that you never hung up. Every conversation you steered back to Brody while I was mid-sentence. You spent my whole life telling me in 1,000 small ways that I didn't matter. And when I finally stopped showing up, you didn't even notice for 5 months. He didn't argue. He just sat there absorbing it. I could see him trying to figure out when I'd grown a spine. When the quiet kid who ate his mashed potatoes and took his dismissals with a thin smile had been replaced by this person sitting across from him, calm and immovable. And then he said something that surprised me. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if you can, I said. But I know what's going to happen with the cabin. That property is going to come to me because that's what Grandpa Earl wanted. And I have the paperwork and the witnesses to prove it. And I'm going to restore it. I'm going to fix the roof and the plumbing and the porch, and I'm going to use it as my workshop. Because that's where I learned to be the person I am. And that person is someone worth knowing, Dad. You just never bothered to find out. He stood up slowly. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the chess sets on my shelf. And I could see something shifting behind his eyes, like he was seeing them for the first time. Really seeing them. The detail, the artistry, the hours and hours of patient, precise work. These are beautiful, he said. And the way he said it, heavy and raw, like the words cost him something. I almost believed he meant it. Thanks, I said. You can let yourself out. He left. I stood at the window and watched his truck pull away. Colleen came out of the bedroom where she'd been giving us space. She put her arms around me from behind and said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm good. I'm actually really good." 3 weeks later, we went to court. Franklin presented the handwritten will. Clifton testified. The attorney's notes were entered into evidence. Aunt Patty, to my genuine surprise, testified that she remembered Grandpa talking about leaving the cabin to me and that she'd always been fine with it. The judge ruled in my favor. The cabin and the 5 acres were transferred to my name. My mother cried in the hallway afterward. Brody stood next to her looking uncomfortable. My dad wasn't there. He'd refused to come. But a week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. It was me at 12 years old, sitting at Grandpa Earl's workbench, holding up a small carved bird with the biggest smile on my face. On the back, in my father's handwriting, it said, I should have paid more attention. I put the photo on my workbench at the cabin, right where Grandpa would have wanted it, and that is where this story ends. The cabin's restored. Nolan proposed to Colleen on the porch. She said yes before he finished the question. Business is thriving. 6-month wait list, national retailer deal. The chess set he pulled from the trash sits by the cabin window, a reminder of what he's worth. Dale came to the cabin once. Didn't say much. Just watched Nolan carve, squeezed his shoulder, and left. That's as eloquent as Dale gets. If you take one thing from this, you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes you just stop showing up for people who never showed up for you. Like the video, subscribe, I'll see you in the next one. Peace. I got served for stalking my ex-wife across 4 states. While on house arrest, my brother played concerned. Then I found out he was the one helping her. So I went nuclear. Hey Reddit, so I, 29 male, 6 months into a 9-month house arrest sentence for securities fraud, doing remote dev work from a 600 square foot dump in Columbus. Divorced 5 months prior. Got a nice little ankle bracelet pinging my location every 30 seconds like it's got a personal vendetta against me. This thing is no joke. Tamper-proof casing, cellular and GPS redundancy, battery backup that'll scream bloody murder if you look at it funny. My probation officer explained it real clear during installation. This thing talks to satellites, cell towers, and our monitoring center simultaneously. You sneeze outside your boundary, we know about it before you finish wiping your nose. County bills me $8 a day for the privilege of being tracked. I know, because they send me the invoice monthly, like it's some kind of subscription service I signed up for. Process server shows up looking nervous when he hands me the papers, probably because I started laughing. Dude did not like that one bit. You good, man? He asks, taking a step back like I might bite. Yeah, I'm fantastic. Ripped open the envelope, scanned the first page. Then I really lost it. That dark, hollow, twisted kind of laugh that makes people uncomfortable. My ex-wife Chelsea was suing me for $425,000. Said I'd been stalking her across 4 states for 6 months straight, following her to work in Detroit, showing up at her apartment in Chicago, photographing her through coffee shop windows in Indianapolis, sending threatening messages from burner phones. 22 documented incidents with dates, times, witness statements, the whole production. Here's the thing, though. I looked down at my ankle, at the black GPS unit that would have had cops dragging me back to county if I'd wandered more than 200 feet from this apartment. Chelsea knew I was under house arrest. She'd cleaned out our joint accounts before the feds could freeze anything, walked away with about $180,000 in cash, and left me a note that said, "Hope prison teaches you something." Real classy. I'd sued her for theft of marital assets 4 months back. Discovery was moving forward, and she was staring down some serious consequences. Now she's claiming I terrorized her across 4 states while wearing a GPS monitor. This wasn't random revenge. This was her calculated play to poison my theft case before it buried her. Have a good one, process server says, practically sprinting back to his car like I might follow him. I shut the door and read the whole lawsuit start to finish. March 22nd, allegedly outside her office in Detroit. My GPS had me here eating lo mein and debugging code for 6 hours straight. April 17th, supposedly in Chicago at some bar watching her. Nope, I was on a call with my dev team in Mumbai until 2 a.m. June 3rd. Indianapolis at a shopping center. That was the day Benjamin brought groceries, and we watched hockey until my eyes glazed over. Every single incident was physically impossible for me to have committed. The lawsuit had dates, times, locations, detailed descriptions. Subject observed in vehicle outside residence. Subject photographed at coffee shop while appearing to take pictures. Subject sent threatening text message from unknown number. Chelsea's attorney had done his homework on building the narrative. Too bad he completely skipped the part about checking if his client's story made basic physical sense given my actual situation. Phone buzzed. Benjamin, my brother. I'd texted him right after, just, "Chelsea's suing me. She's claiming I've been stalking her," I told him. Across 4 states, while wearing a GPS monitor. Benjamin sounded genuinely pissed. Is she out of her mind? Desperate. My theft case is about to bury her. This is her smokescreen. Whatever you need, bro. I'm here. Benjamin had been consistent. Only family member who didn't ghost me after the conviction. Showed up every week without fail. Brought groceries. Made sure I wasn't losing my mind sitting in isolation day after day. When everyone else decided I was radioactive waste, he stuck around. Said family means something. I believed him. Called my lawyer. Chelsea's suing me for stalking. 425. Says I've been following her around the Midwest. That's impossible. You're under electronic monitoring. GPS puts me right here during every alleged incident, but she's got photos, witness statements, pictures of me at these locations. My lawyer went quiet. This is retaliation. She's trying to tank your credibility before the theft judgment hits. Send everything. We'll move to dismiss and go after fees and sanctions for bad faith litigation. After we hung up, I pulled my monitoring data. Someone was setting me up, and they'd put real work into it. 3 weeks before the lawsuit, I'd gotten a cease and desist from some attorney, threatened criminal charges if I didn't stop contacting Chelsea, stop following her, stop harassing her, forwarded it to my lawyer, completely confused. Any contact with Chelsea since the divorce? Haven't talked to anyone except my PO, delivery guys, Benjamin, and you. But the attorney's letter claimed Chelsea had documentation, dates, incidents, witnesses. My lawyer told them I was under electronic monitoring and their claims were impossible. They didn't care. Benjamin was there that night when the cease and desist came, on my couch eating takeout, helping organize financial docs for the theft case. Chelsea's desperate, Benjamin said. Your lawsuit's airtight. She took 180 grand before the feds could freeze anything. Now she's scrambling. She's gonna lose both cases. Stay aggressive, bro. Documents, character witnesses, legal fees, whatever you need. I'm here. The securities fraud conviction still burned me up. Feds claimed I ran an insider trading scheme through offshore accounts, made $340,000 in illegal profits over 18 months, had trading logs from my API keys, emails from my accounts, wire transfers to shell companies I supposedly created in jurisdictions I'd never even heard of. Problem was, I didn't do any of it. Not a single trade. Took a plea deal anyway because fighting it meant risking 15 years if I lost at trial. Public defender laid it out cold. Evidence looked damning even though it was fabricated. Feds had a 97% conviction rate, and the judge was known for harsh sentences on white-collar cases. Take the deal. 4 years with possibility of house arrest after 4 months, or roll the dice and probably die in prison as an old man. I took the deal. Spent 4 months in county, then got house arrest based on good behavior and nonviolent status. But I never figured out who actually ran those trades. Someone used my credentials, my accounts, my identity to pull off the fraud and let me take the fall for it. I'd spent months trying to investigate on my own, but every lead went completely cold. Eventually just focused on surviving my sentence and going after Chelsea for the money she stole. Now the lawsuit arrived with attachments, photographs. Lawyers sent them over that evening. Benjamin was still there, brought dinner, and we opened the files on my laptop together. Photos showed a guy who looked like me. Same height, same build, same dark hair, and general vibe. Standing outside an office building in Detroit, half hidden behind a car like he was watching someone. Sitting in a Chicago bar window, watching Chelsea's table across the room. Walking behind her in an Indianapolis mall parking lot. Close enough to be concerning. Holy crap, Benjamin said, leaning in close to the screen. That does look like you. That's creepy as hell. Resemblance was solid. Close enough that someone who'd been married to me for 4 years might absolutely buy it at first glance. But it's not me, I said. GPS proves it. Who the hell would go to this much trouble? This is professional level planning. Someone really wants to help Chelsea destroy my credibility. Benjamin looked worried. You think they're connected? Your fraud case and this? Don't know. But Chelsea's motivated to kill my lawsuit. Lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. Attached my complete GPS logs for every single date in Chelsea's lawsuit. Motion argued I was under court-ordered electronic monitoring. My location was tracked continuously by the state, and the data definitively proved I was home during every single alleged incident. We also went after fees and sanctions for bad faith litigation. First hearing got pushed back twice. Once because the clerk filed our motion in the wrong docket like an amateur. Once because the judge's calendar was a complete dumpster fire. What should have been a month became 12 weeks of waiting. Sat in my apartment watching legal fees stack up, while Chelsea's attorney fought everything like it was the last chopper out of Saigon. Chelsea's attorney claimed GPS data could be falsified, that electronic systems malfunction all the time, that photographic evidence supersedes electronic records in reliability. Said my theft lawsuit proved vindictive behavior that supported her stalking allegations against me. My probation officer provided an affidavit. I'd been compliant for 180 days straight. Monitoring device was working perfectly throughout. Any unauthorized movement would have triggered immediate alerts to law enforcement. Then Chelsea's next filing dropped text messages. Dozens of threatening texts from burners over 5 months. Saw you at the gym yesterday. Red tank top looks good on you. Your new boyfriend's a downgrade. Moving apartments won't help. I know where you are. Benjamin was there when my lawyer sent them. Read through them at my kitchen table. These don't even sound like you, Benjamin said. This possessive crap isn't your style. Exactly. But Chelsea's desperate enough to manufacture anything. This whole thing is coordinated. Benjamin pushed back from the table, pacing. Someone's helping Chelsea fabricate evidence. We need to figure out who benefits. Good question. I'd burned bridges with the conviction, lost business partners' money, made enemies in finance. But Chelsea had the clearest motive, kill my theft lawsuit before it bankrupted her. What about Chelsea's new boyfriend? Benjamin asked. She mentioned someone named Hayden in her depot, videographer. Benjamin nodded slow. Jealous boyfriend? Professional camera gear? Opportunity to stage photos? Makes sense. Lawyer brought in Cameron, a cybersecurity analyst, to help analyze the messages and photos professionally. Cost another $8,000 I definitely didn't have, but lawyer said we needed a credentialed expert or the judge wouldn't take our defense seriously enough. Cameron showed up with his laptop and that, I'm not sleeping until this makes sense, energy that I immediately appreciated. Benjamin insisted on being there, acting helpful, but weirdly invested in every detail of the process. Kept asking questions about what we'd subpoena, about timeline, about next steps. Thought he was just being supportive at the time. Lawyer set up video so I could participate from my apartment while staying compliant. Cameron walked through his findings methodically. Guy had credentials, 15 years doing digital forensics for insurance fraud cases, expert witness testimony in multiple states, reputation for finding what others missed. My lawyer had worked with him on several cases before. All wins. These texts were sent during times your GPS shows you home, Cameron explained. Cell tower data should show signals from towers near your location if you'd sent them. Pulled up the photos. Professional composition, lighting compensation, rule of thirds, techniques suggesting experienced videography. Different phones over 6 months, but quality and composition are consistent. So they're staged? Lawyer asked. Definitely. And there's more. Cameron zoomed in. Most metadata was stripped, but some EXEF survived. A few photos have embedded GPS coordinates that don't match claimed locations, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. Benjamin leaned forward. So someone with professional camera equipment followed Chelsea, photographed someone who looks like Jonathan, sent the images to make it look like surveillance? Exactly, Cameron said. This is sophisticated. Someone with technical knowledge, videography skills, serious motivation. The boyfriend, I said. Hayden, freelance videographer. If Chelsea loses the theft case, she's bankrupt. No future with her. Cameron nodded. I'll pull what I can from public records and social media. Results came back 12 days later. Hayden, 31, freelance videographer and drone operator. Lived in Detroit before moving to Chicago 9 months ago, right when the alleged stalking started. Social media showed Indianapolis visits at various times. But the interesting part was his history. Been engaged 2 years earlier to a woman in Detroit who broke it off citing controlling behavior. She'd filed a police report saying Hayden stalked her after their breakup. Charges dropped after he agreed to a restraining order and anger management. Documented stalking history, Cameron explained during our next call. Benjamin there again, listening close. Professional who understands image manipulation. Dating Chelsea for about 7 months, overlapping perfectly with when incidents began. Financially tied to her. If the theft case bankrupts Chelsea, Hayden loses his meal ticket. Lawyer filed an emergency motion requesting permission to depose Hayden and subpoena his records for the case. Chelsea's attorney acted like we'd asked permission to waterboard his client. Protective motions, harassment claims, demands for proof before we could start discovery. The whole defensive playbook. Spent 2 months watching him argue Hayden was irrelevant to the allegations, while simultaneously listing him as Chelsea's key witness in her filings. Meanwhile, I'm burning through money I don't have, so some judge won't think I'm making excuses for behavior I couldn't have committed. Lawyers started firing off subpoenas for security footage everywhere. Next 2 months was straight trench warfare. Everyone wanted money for retrieval. Everyone suddenly couldn't find footage. Every place had the same magical 14-day retention window that conveniently reset the second you needed their records. 2 subpoenas came back completely useless. Footage overwritten or system errors nobody could explain. Chelsea's attorney fought every single request, filing protective motions and crying harassment until the judge said produce what we're asking for or explain yourself under oath. But the scraps told the story. Hayden's Easy Pass putting him on the road during dates, I allegedly stalked her in different states. Gas station receipts along the routes. Carrier records and cell data putting his phone in the area on exact dates my GPS had me in Columbus. Security footage catching his car once, plate hits elsewhere. Enough lined up, and the gaps lined up too. Then Chelsea's attorney emailed my lawyer. She wanted to settle. Lawyer forwarded the message. Chelsea would drop the stalking lawsuit if I paid her $50,000 for relocation costs and emotional trauma, and withdrew my theft case with prejudice. Called my lawyer immediately. She's trying to cash out. That's exactly what this is, he agreed. She knows GPS data is solid, knows Hayden's history is problematic, trying to exit before it gets worse while killing your theft case. Tell her no. We're going to trial on both. Lawyer sent back one sentence. Client declines. Lawyer was reviewing everything with me via video. Benjamin on my couch eating leftover pizza, listening to every word on speaker. This is enough, lawyer said. We can corner the narrative. Hayden was conducting the surveillance, not you. Cameron added, classic abuser tactic. Create the threat. Position yourself as the solution. Then we got the rest. Hayden bought burner phones with cash over months. Same phones used for threatening texts. Travel records put him in multiple states on dates I allegedly stalked Chelsea. Phone records showed obsessive behavior, hundreds of calls and texts, tracking her location constantly through an app he'd installed. That's when things got interesting. Cameron called me one afternoon. Benjamin happened to be there, dropping off groceries and helping organize documents for my fraud case appeal. Jonathan, we got Hayden's phone and email through Discovery. Export included unsent drafts, planning docs, and payment records for someone named Jude. Looks like Jude's the guy in the photos. So Hayden hired someone to impersonate me? Exactly. Jude's an aspiring actor from Detroit who's done modeling for Hayden's business. We tracked him down. Interview happened next day. Jude confirmed enough. Story matched the paper trail. Hayden hired him for shoots over 6 months, paid cash per session, told him it was a creative project about urban surveillance. Jude had no idea he was being used to frame someone. He showed me reference photos, Jude said in his recorded statement. Wanted me to match this specific person's style. Casual clothes, similar posture, same haircut. He'd direct where to stand, how to position myself. Felt like legit artistic work. But while Cameron was going through Hayden's financials from Discovery, he found something else. Something that made him call an emergency meeting. Cameron's voice on the call was careful. Need to show you something from the Hayden financial discovery. Might be nothing, but it's odd. Cameron, my lawyer, and me on the call. Benjamin in my kitchen again, parked beside me like he'd moved in. Cameron shared his screen. Hayden's bank records show he's drowning in debt from a failed business. Standard motive for helping Chelsea avoid bankruptcy from Jonathan's theft case. But while cross-referencing Hayden's contractors, I noticed something weird in Jonathan's original securities fraud files. Pulled up a document. The shell company that received wire transfers in Jonathan's fraud case was Vertex Solutions LLC. Standard offshore setup. But Hayden paid a consultant for tech services about 18 months ago. Same shell company pattern, similar incorporation structure. That's a coincidence, Benjamin said quick. Lots of people use shell companies for freelance work. Right, Cameron said. But when we pulled incorporation agent info for Jonathan's original case, the registered agent listed a recovery email. That same email domain shows up in Discovery as a contact for freelance services Hayden used. I felt cold. What's that mean? Could be nothing. But I started digging into the original securities fraud case. Trades were executed using Jonathan's API keys from an IP masked through VPN. But there's backup authentication data from the trading platform. Cross-referenced login times with network logs, found something. Cameron pulled up a technical doc. Multiple logins to Jonathan's accounts from a device in Columbus during the fraudulent trades. Device fingerprint shows a MacBook Pro. When I checked case files, there's photos Jonathan's public defender submitted showing his home office setup. Zoomed in on one photo. Laptop visible in the background, not Jonathan's main workstation. Someone else's device was in that office regularly during the fraud. Stomach dropped. Benjamin helped me set up my home office 3 years ago. He was there constantly back then, working on his own stuff while I was trading. Whose laptop? Lawyer asked. Don't know yet, Cameron said. But we should look into it. Jonathan, anyone else have regular access to your office during that time? Just Benjamin, I said, quiet. My brother was there constantly, helping with tech setup, using my Wi-Fi for his freelance work. Silence stretched. Could hear Benjamin breathing beside me. Benjamin shifted. This is getting weird. You think my old laptop has something to do with Jonathan's fraud case? Why would we even be looking at that? I was just helping my brother. Question hit wrong. Too defensive? Too specific about what we shouldn't investigate. When lawyer mentioned subpoenaing carriers and date ranges, Benjamin immediately asked which ones and what time frames, like he was the one paying. Not accusing anyone, Cameron said careful, but we need to examine every angle. These shell company patterns, the device access, the timing, worth looking into. Jonathan, did Benjamin have access to your password manager or trading accounts? He helped me set up my password manager 3 years ago. We shared a lot of tech access back then. Hands felt numb. 3 years of lies. 6 months visiting me every week during house arrest. 3 years pretending to be supportive while making sure I never looked too close at who actually committed the fraud. After the call, Benjamin looked uncomfortable. Jonathan, you know I didn't have anything to do with your fraud case, right? I was just helping with tech stuff. Cameron's reaching because the Hayden case is complicated. I would never... I know, I said. But doubt was creeping in. And Benjamin was talking too much, explaining too hard. Cameron called back 2 hours later. Jonathan, we pulled forensic data from your original case. Backup logs from your password manager show your trading credentials were accessed from a device in Columbus during the fraudulent trades. Device fingerprint matches laptops commonly used by freelance developers and designers. Benjamin is a freelance graphic designer, I said quiet. I know. I'm digging deeper. Give me a few days. Those few days felt like months. Sat in my apartment, GPS monitor, chirping its regular check-ins, watching Benjamin careful during his visits. He was asking more questions now, pushing me hard to focus on Hayden, suggesting we shouldn't waste time on old cases that were already settled, getting weirdly specific about what we shouldn't bother investigating. Every visit felt like surveillance. Like he was making sure I wasn't connecting dots he didn't want connected. Lawyer worked quietly in the background, subpoenaed Benjamin's financial records, arguing that understanding who else might have motive to frame Jonathan was relevant to the ongoing stalking case. Benjamin's attorney tried to block it, claimed privacy concerns, filed protective motions, took another month of fighting to get the production order. Records came back late September. Benjamin was deep in debt from failed investments and margin calls, had been for 3 years, right around the time I'd been convicted. Then Cameron found the wire transfers. Small amounts over time, structured to avoid detection, adding up to $340,000 total, coming from accounts connected to shell companies used in my fraud case, going into Benjamin's accounts through carefully layered transfers. The timeline was absolutely devastating. Benjamin had taken $340,000 from the insider trading scheme, the exact amount the feds claimed I'd made. He'd been in my office regularly during that entire period, had complete access to my credentials, had the technical knowledge to execute the trades without leaving obvious traces. And he'd let me plead guilty to his crimes, watched me do it. Probably felt relieved. Cameron presented everything to Lawyer and me during a video call in early November. Jonathan, I believe your brother framed you for the securities fraud. The evidence shows he had access to your accounts, had the technical capability to execute the trades, had strong financial motive from his mounting debt, and received the money from the offshore accounts through layered transfers. He let you take the plea deal while he kept the profits. Sat in my apartment feeling my entire world collapse around me. Why would he do that to me? The debt, Cameron said. Benjamin was drowning 3 years ago. Margin calls piling up, failed trades everywhere, mounting interest crushing him. He panicked and made a choice. Used your credentials because he had access and because you'd make a plausible target if the trades ever got flagged. When the feds investigated, he stayed quiet and let you take the fall for everything. But he's been visiting me every week for 6 months, I said, trying to make it make sense. Making sure you didn't investigate, Lawyer said quiet. Every single visit was damage control. He needed to know what you were thinking, what you were looking into, who you were talking to about the old case. Benjamin showed up that evening, dropping off groceries like always. Didn't confront him about anything. Not yet. Sat at my kitchen table eating takeout, watched him careful the entire time, looking for any sign of guilt on his face, looking for the lie underneath the supportive brother act I'd been watching for 6 months. You okay? Benjamin asked. You seem distracted tonight. Just thinking about Chelsea's case. Cameron's helping prove Hayden fabricated everything against me. That's good news, right? You'll be cleared, her smokescreen collapses completely, your theft lawsuit destroys her financially. Yeah, it's good. But I was thinking about Cameron's evidence the entire conversation. 3 years of lies staring me in the face. 4 months in county jail and 6 months under house arrest for crimes my own brother committed while sitting on this very couch pretending to care about me. After Benjamin left, I called Cameron immediately. Need you to verify every single thing before we move forward. Need to be absolutely certain this is what it looks like. I understand. I'm being extremely thorough. Give me another week to nail it down. Verification came methodically over the next several weeks. Lawyer coordinated with FBI's Financial Crimes Division, presented Cameron's evidence, requested access to old case files, and forensic data from my original investigation. They moved slow. Government agencies always do when it doesn't benefit them, but they moved forward. FBI's forensic accountants traced the money over 6 weeks of painstaking work. Every wire transfer from the offshore accounts eventually reached Benjamin through various intermediary accounts designed to hide the trail. The trading platform's security logs showed fraudulent trades were executed from IP addresses in Columbus during times when I was provably elsewhere, at client meetings, on work trips, at locations with time-stamped evidence proving I couldn't have been home. But someone in Columbus with access to my home office and credentials could have made those trades. Someone like Benjamin. FBI's technical team analyzed device fingerprints from authentication logs, cross-referenced the data with Benjamin's laptop purchase records, and registration info they pulled through subpoenas. The fingerprints matched a MacBook Pro Benjamin had owned during that period, one he'd upgraded about a year after my conviction. Forensic evidence was overwhelming. Benjamin committed the securities fraud, used my credentials, my accounts, my identity, let me plead guilty, visited weekly to maintain the facade and make sure I never investigated. Cameron presented everything to lawyer and me during a video call in early November. FBI is ready to move on charges against Benjamin. Wire fraud, securities fraud, identity theft, obstruction of justice. They're already building warrants and don't want him wiping devices or moving money once he realizes you're looking at him. Civil mess was background noise that helped keep him calm. He's my brother, I said quiet. He framed you for federal crimes and let you serve time for them, Cameron said. Didn't sleep that night. Just sat in my apartment going over every conversation with Benjamin over 6 months. Every visit, every supportive word, every offer to help, every time he'd steered me away from investigating the fraud case. Looking for the lie underneath it all, Cameron worked with lawyer to proceed with the stalking case first. Needed to get Chelsea's lawsuit dismissed, expose Hayden's scheme, secure my theft judgment against Chelsea, then quietly build the case against Benjamin without tipping him off. 3 weeks later, meeting with Chelsea and her attorney. Lawyer attended in person. I joined via video. Cameron presented evidence against Hayden methodically. Background check showing Hayden's stalking conviction. Photos proving professional staging. Financial records showing burner phone purchases. Security footage showing Hayden following Chelsea obsessively. Jude's testimony about being hired to impersonate me. Toll records putting Hayden on the road every time I allegedly stalked her in different states. Chelsea's face went pale as evidence stacked up. She'd been so desperate to avoid the theft judgment, she never questioned Hayden's convenient evidence. Never asked how I could stalk her from house arrest. He proposed last month, Chelsea said quiet. Said I needed time. He got angry. Grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. Rolled up her sleeve. Dark purple finger marks circled her forearm. Chelsea's attorney looked sick. Chelsea, we need to involve law enforcement immediately, and I'm filing an emergency motion to withdraw this lawsuit. Before he could finish, my lawyer put a folder on the table. Before we discuss withdrawal, let's talk about Chelsea's settlement offer, the one where she demanded $50,000 to drop a lawsuit she knew was false and tried to force Jonathan to abandon his legitimate theft claim. Chelsea's attorney went pale. What? Your client tried to extort my client while knowingly pursuing false charges. We have the email. We'll be including it in our bad faith claim. Meeting ended with Chelsea agreeing to cooperate with police, her attorney withdrawing the lawsuit with prejudice, and lawyer negotiating a settlement where Chelsea paid my legal fees, $67,000, and agreed not to contest my theft case. Judge entered judgment in my favor for $180,000 on the theft case. Total recovery around $247,000. Hayden was arrested 2 weeks later, charged with stalking, harassment, witness tampering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Chelsea's cooperation and the mountain of evidence Cameron compiled made the prosecution straightforward. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial and got 6 years. Chelsea called 2 days after the settlement, crying, begging me not to report her settlement offer to her employer or the state bar. You tried to extort me, Chelsea, while I was under house arrest. While you knew Hayden was actually stalking you, you were willing to destroy me to save yourself. I made a mistake. Please, Jonathan. No, you made a choice. Now you live with it. But I wasn't thinking about Chelsea anymore. I was thinking about my brother. 3 years of lies. 6 months of fake support while he made sure I never discovered his betrayal. Benjamin called that evening, excited. Bro, heard the lawsuit got dismissed. That's amazing. And you're getting money back from Chelsea. Should celebrate when you're off house arrest. Yeah, I said. Good news. You don't sound happy. I'm tired. Been a long process. I get it, but you're almost free. Few more months and that ankle monitor comes off. Then we can get back to normal. Normal. Like he hadn't destroyed my life to save his own. After we hung up, I called Cameron. How long until FBI moves on Benjamin? Finalizing the warrant now. Probably few weeks. They wanted to wait until you were officially cleared in the stalking case and secured your judgment against Chelsea. That happened yesterday. So they're moving forward. What are his chances? Evidence is overwhelming, looking at 8 to 12 years federal time if convicted. And he will be convicted. FBI arrested Benjamin 6 weeks later at his apartment. Early morning raid, multiple agents, local police backup for containment. Charged with wire fraud, securities fraud, identity theft, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit all of the above. Bail set at $500,000. He couldn't make it. Not even close. His neighbors watched from their windows as agents led him out in handcuffs. Someone filmed the whole thing on their phone. Video hit local news by afternoon. I didn't watch it more than twice. He called me from county jail that evening, confused and panicked. "Jonathan, what the hell is happening? FBI arrested me. They're saying I committed securities fraud using your accounts. This is insane." I stayed quiet. "Jonathan? You there? This is some mistake. You have to help me. You're my brother." Cameron found the evidence, Benjamin. Wire transfers, device logs, authentication records. You used my credentials 3 years ago. Made $340,000 while I was at client meetings and work trips. Let me plead guilty to federal crimes you committed. Silence on the line. You visited me dozens of times, I continued. Brought groceries, acted supportive, made sure I never investigated who really ran those trades. Every question you asked, every time you pushed me to focus on Hayden and not the old case, that was you protecting yourself? Jonathan, I was drowning. Debt was crushing me. I panicked. Thought you'd just get probation, maybe house arrest. Didn't think it would destroy your life like this. You watched me plead guilty. Watched me spend 4 months in county jail. Watched me get that ankle monitor locked onto my leg. And you said nothing. I wanted to tell you. Was trying to figure out how. You had 6 months of visits to tell the truth. You didn't because you weren't feeling guilty. You were making sure I didn't discover what you'd done. Jonathan, please, I'm your brother. We can work this out. I hung up. Lawyer filed an emergency motion next day. Not a victory lap. Asked the court to yank the ankle monitor immediately because underlying facts were rotten, then deal with the conviction on a real schedule. Prosecutor didn't fight the monitor part once FBI's financial tracing started matching Cameron's work. Judge didn't forgive anything. She just modified my conditions pending review and set a fast hearing date. Monitor came off first. Actual vacatur came after paper trail got blessed on the record, about 3 months later, when all parties agreed conviction was unsupportable. Benjamin's attorney tried to negotiate a plea, 6 years for full restitution and cooperation. Prosecutor offered 8 years minimum. Benjamin's attorney pushed back, argued his client was remorseful and cooperative. Prosecutor sent over a file showing Benjamin visited me dozens of times during house arrest, each visit documented in visitor logs. Your client wasn't being supportive, prosecutor wrote. He was monitoring his victim to ensure his crimes stayed hidden. We're not negotiating below 8 years. Lawyer advised me on civil lawsuit strategy. We can sue Benjamin for damages, lost income, legal fees, emotional distress, looking at potentially mid-6 figures if we win. Do it. Lawyer filed the civil lawsuit against Benjamin. FBI continued building their criminal case. Benjamin's public defender kept trying to negotiate plea deals, but evidence was too strong. Prosecution wouldn't budge. Benjamin's attorney urged him to accept the 8-year deal. Benjamin refused, convinced he could negotiate better or somehow explain away the evidence at trial. He lost that gamble. Faced with overwhelming evidence at trial, jury convicted on all counts, sentencing was set. Benjamin's sentencing happened via video because I refused to appear in person. Judge presiding. She read Benjamin's crimes aloud, using his brother's identity to commit securities fraud, letting his brother take the conviction, obstructing justice by visiting his brother during house arrest to ensure his crimes stayed hidden. "Mr. Benjamin," Judge said to him directly, "you betrayed your brother's trust in the most calculated way possible. You didn't just commit fraud against strangers. You destroyed your own brother's life and then let him serve time for your crimes while you played the supportive family member. The presentencing report shows you visited your brother dozens of times during his house arrest, not out of love or family loyalty, but to monitor your victim and protect your own interests from discovery. The court finds this particularly egregious behavior. She sentenced him to 10 years federal prison. Benjamin's attorney protested immediately, but the judge was completely firm. The defendant showed no remorse until he was caught. He maintained a facade of support while ensuring his own crimes stayed hidden from everyone. That level of sustained deception warrants the maximum sentence this court can impose. Watched via video from my apartment. The apartment I was finally free to leave whenever I wanted, whenever I felt like it. Watched my brother's face crumble as the reality of what was happening hit him fully. 10 years federal time. He'd be in his 40s when he got out, if he behaved. His entire life destroyed the same way he destroyed mine. Felt like justice, not revenge. Lawyers' civil lawsuit against Benjamin proceeded simultaneously. Benjamin's attorney tried to negotiate settlement, Roughly $400,000 paid through selling Benjamin's assets and setting up a payment plan. It's realistic, lawyer said. Could push for more, but Benjamin doesn't have it. This gets you compensated and closes the civil case. I accepted. Benjamin's apartment, car, and investment accounts were liquidated. Combined with Chelsea's judgment, I was looking at compensation in the mid-six figures. Didn't undo 3 years of damage, but it helped. After sentencing, my probation officer called. I owe you an apology. Should have questioned the original evidence more carefully. You had no reason to doubt it. Benjamin made sure of that. My conviction was officially overturned. Record cleared completely. Brother sitting in federal prison for 10 years. Ex-wife lost her career and owed me serious money. The boyfriend who'd actually stalked her was serving 6 years. The ankle monitor that imprisoned me for 6 months also saved me. GPS data proving I couldn't have stalked Chelsea, triggering the investigation that exposed Hayden, leading to the discovery that revealed Benjamin's fraud. Same surveillance that trapped me ended up destroying him. Poetic, I guess. Deleted Benjamin's contact info. Blocked his number completely. Erased every photo, every text, every trace of our relationship from my phone and my life. He wasn't my brother anymore, just another criminal serving time for crimes he actually committed. Family doesn't do what he did to me. Lawyer called that evening. How you holding up? Good. For the first time in 3 years, I'm not carrying anyone else's crimes. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.